I've been using the Oppo A78 for about a week now, probably longer by the time you're seeing this. Fun fact, this is the very first Oppo phone I've ever used, so some things felt new. Let's talk about it. Yeah, it's not every day I get to try out something new. So when Oppo reached out and said,
"Hey, we want to send you a phone,"
I was like, send it. Starting out with the unboxing experience, one thing you get is accessories, thankfully. Besides the phone, there's a phone case, which is different from the transparent ones we're used to, sort of higher quality, which I definitely like. We also get a USB-A to USB-C charging cable and a pretty chunky charging adapter. More on this a little later. So we get every possible accessory except wired earphones. And if you're wondering, no, they did not remove the headphone jack. It's still there at the bottom of the phone. It's right next to the microphone, which is next to the Type-C port, which is then next to one of the two speakers on this phone. On the right side, you'd find the power button and volume rockers. You'd notice that we have the regular type power button, and that's because the fingerprint reader is underneath the display. What I really like is that when you pick this phone up, the area of the screen where the fingerprint sensor is located lights up. So it tells you exactly where to place your finger. That way, you always get it right. And in terms of speed and accuracy, it's as fast as an optical sensor can be and works 99% of the time, even when your hands are slightly moist. Thankfully too, this has support for expandable storage and even dual nano SIMs. The tray for that is on the left side of the phone. On the top you find nothing, and that's because the second speaker is on the front of the phone just above the screen, same spot as the earpiece. So we've got dual stereo speakers, and I can confirm that they're pretty loud. It even has an ultra volume mode, which sounds even louder. Oppo is apparently going for a minimalistic look with the A78, so if you're a fan of that, this would work for you. We've got two camera rings to the top left and a sort of strip underneath with text that says innovative AI camera. And then at the bottom right, we have the Oppo branding. It looks pretty simple, but that strip, or runway as Oppo calls it, adds a bit of flair to it. But if you want to tone that flair down a bit, you could use the case that it comes with. And now it looks more minimalistic. Now, this isn't a small phone by any means, but somehow it just feels compact. I don't know if it's the sides being thin or the width of the phone, but it somehow feels small in my hand, and my hands easily wrap around it. It's a tall but thin phone. That's how I would put it. So the design's pretty okay, especially if you're into that minimalistic vibe. And that continues when you turn the phone over. They went with a hole punch cutout for the selfie camera, and it's on the top left side of the screen. Bezels at the top and sides are fairly sized, but the chin. You see, I'm always going to talk about this. Let's make it smaller. But yeah, it's probably not that big a deal. It's a good looking screen. It's 6.43 inches, it's 1080p, it's AMOLED, and it's a 90Hz screen. So again, it's a good looking display. It's sharp, colors are accurate, blacks are blacks, everything just looks as it should. It's also fluid when scrolling and navigating through the UI, and that's thanks to the higher refresh rate. On YouTube, you can watch videos up to 1080p, and as you can imagine, they look great. And if for some reason you're not satisfied with how the display looks, you can still tweak the display settings to your liking in these settings, but I do prefer the default vivid color mode. One thing you would have to turn on though is the always on display, because by default it's turned off. You can also tweak that in a couple ways. And that's kind of the story with ColorOS. This is running ColorOS 13.1 on top of Android 13, and there are just a bunch of customization options, like wallpapers for example. There are lots of them, and automatically, when you change your wallpaper, the colors of the UI elements change as well, making your phone feel new every time you change your wallpaper. Glad they added this. You can choose the font you want as well as the size, also how you want icons to look, how you want the quick settings to look, the fingerprint animation. There's also edge lighting. And this is the first time I'm seeing this, but you can even choose how dark you want dark mode to look. There are just way too many customization options. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying ColorOS, but there's always a but. It does come with a couple pre-installed apps, which thankfully you can uninstall. And there are these hot apps and hot games folders that are on your home screen and app drawer. That too can be removed by toggling them off in the settings app. But other than those two small hiccups, I would say I really like Color OS. It feels new, there are no bugs, and everything's just been pretty smooth. But I would say the processor has something to do with that too. This is running the Snapdragon 680 processor and has 8GB of RAM. And while not the fastest processor out there, it is designed to deliver performance while conserving power. It's a processor built on a 6nm process, and if you watch enough reviews, you know that the smaller the nanometer, the more efficient it is. So essentially, battery life is really good. More on that later. For the gamers, this comes with the Adreno 610 GPU, and just like with the CPU, it's not the best out there, but it will play all games at medium graphics settings and last way longer while gaming thanks to that efficiency. It comes with 8GB of RAM, which definitely helps with multitasking and memory management, and there's also the option of up to 8GB of virtual RAM. My experience with it has been pretty good. Apps open relatively quickly, I had no issues switching between 2 to 3 apps, gaming was smooth too, and I think overall performance was satisfactory, which actually is what most people want. So yeah, like I said earlier, battery life is really good. On the A78, we get a 5000 mAh battery, which is a decent size, and when you combine that with the Snapdragon 680, you get these results. 30 minutes of gaming took 6% of the battery, and that comes out to 8.5 hours of battery life if you're just gaming. And then when I watched an hour-long movie, it took 5% of the battery, which is about 20 hours of battery life if you're just watching content. So depending on what you're doing on this phone, it could take up to 2 days before you need to charge it up. So okay, long-lasting battery life. What about charging speed? Glad you asked. I asked myself. Anyway, remember that chunky charger that I said we'll come back to? Well, that's a 67 watt charging adapter. And when I tested it, it took 45 minutes to fill up from 0%. In 15 minutes, it went from 0 to 47%. So essentially, you could plug your phone up real quick, go take a shower, go brush your teeth, and by the time you're back, you have enough battery for like the rest of the day. The combination of great battery life and fast charging is rare, but it's here. See what I did there?
Ooh.
Rare, here, there. Okay. Now let's talk cameras. This has a 50 megapixel main sensor and a secondary 2 megapixel sensor. So our focus is just on that main camera. I shot a ton of pictures in very different lighting conditions, and what I discovered is that in well-lit environments, you can get detailed, color accurate images from this camera. In these two shots, you can see so much detail even when you zoom in. So I think with the right lighting conditions, this is an 8 out of 10 camera. For the selfie camera, it also does well when there's a ton of light. So just make sure to face the light source and you get better looking selfies. And then for video, it shoots max at 1080p and has EIS, and that means your footage has a bit of stabilization, which is great for like when you're moving around. I personally think photos are better than videos, but you tell me what you think of the photos and videos of the Oppo A78. Okay, so let's talk little things now. The A78 has an IP54 rating for dust and water resistance. That definitely gives you some peace of mind. In the camera app, there's a dual view video mode. That's pretty cool. There's also a leveler, which helps you take straight photos. Pretty useful. There's no front-facing flash, but the screen acts as your front-facing flash. Also very useful. Oh, and you also get 2 months of YouTube Premium. 2 months.
The A78 goes for 188,000 naira.
So what do you think about it? Which feature do you like the most? For me, it has to be the great battery life plus that 67 watt Super VOOC fast charging. I think that's what they call it. But either way, just let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching to the very end. Comment lavender so I know you got to the very end. I'll see you when you see me.